You need me to move?
No, I don't. You don't have to be by the squeaky mic. I know you want to.
Check 1 2. Mic check 1 2.
Mic check. That one's probably off.
Guys, we can read our numbers. They have the numbers. I put stickers on your 6 months.
Mine ain't working. Mine's not on. Mic check.
Oh, yeah.
Did you take that away from Eric? Is this one mine?
Good morning. Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order for October 19th, 2016. Meeting of the Charter Authorizing Panel. I'd like to welcome everyone to the AD Auditorium and ask you to please silence all electronic devices. The Charter Authorizing Panel oversees the authorization, renewal, revision, and revocation of charters. Today, we will facilitate a fair and responsible hearing. I will ask that each person speaking please state your name and title for the record. I will ask that you continue to speak clearly into the microphone for the benefit of the panel, the audience, and the viewing audience. The entire meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be posted on the ADE website. In addition, our court reporter, Ms. Sharon Hill, will be providing a transcript of the meeting, and it too will be posted on the ADE website. Yeah. All right. I have no chair report. Is there a report from any member of the panel? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda for the minutes and the 2017 meeting schedule. I'll accept a motion for approval.
Motion to approve consent.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Gocher, a second by Ms. Smith. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Moving to the action item 1, Ms. Boyd, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, on the consent agenda, we also had a draft set of dates for your meetings for next year. Did y'all approve those?
We did.
Okay,
We're on a roll.
super efficient. Okay, don't let me slow you down. All right, thank you. The first agenda item you'll hear is House Hall has a request for an additional campus. And Jennifer Davis can remind you of the hearing procedures before we get started with that.
You're recognized, Ms. Davis.
Good morning, Jennifer Davis, staff attorney for the department. The procedures that you're going to follow today will be all persons, with the exception of attorneys, will need to be sworn in. The applicant will then have 20 minutes to present its presentation to you, followed by 20 minutes for opposition. After any opposition speaks, the applicant will then have an additional 5 minutes to rebut anything or make any final comments. You may then ask any questions of the applicant, of the department, or of anyone else. At that point, you can either choose to make a decision today to vote for or disapprove their amendment or their request, and then if you choose to take it up at a later time, you can do so as well. You also have a Google Docs to mark your reasons for your vote.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Davis, if you will check for public comment at the end of that time period. Ms. Boyd?
Speaking for Haas Hall to begin their presentation, we have Dr. Martin Schottmeyer.
If everyone that will be speaking on behalf of Haas Hall Academy and anyone speaking in opposition would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Dr. Schottmeyer, you're recognized.
Does my PowerPoint come up first? Oh, awesome. I'm Martin Schottmeyer. I'm the founder and superintendent of Haas Hall Academy. Our background, our mission, our vision is to ensure that every scholar every day is college bound. We're the #1 ranked public high school in the state of Arkansas for the past 5 years. Nish picked us the best school in 2016, Business Insider 2015. We're number 19 in the nation. We're the only gold medal school in Arkansas for the 3 consecutive years. Ranked as one of America's most challenging schools with the Washington Post for 4 consecutive years. Earned a letter grade of A with a perfect score of 300 on 2 of the assessments by the state. And our school newspaper received the state's top award at the Arkansas Scholastic Press Association conference for 4 consecutive years, and they were recently inducted into the Hall of Fame. Here are some of the colleges our scholars have been accepted to over the past couple of years. We have a campus in Fayetteville. We have a campus in Bentonville. Our campus in Springdale will open up in the fall of 2017. And we'd like to also open up a campus in Rogers at the Lane Hotel in the fall of 17. Population growth for this area is astronomical. 2010, 123,800 students. 15, 129,302 students. Projected for 2020 is 140,508 students. So you see positive growth in every part of the area. Northwest Arkansas, Rogers, Bentonville. That requires more schools, more places to educate, and I think charter schools can help fill the void for that. %22% of our scholars identify as non-white in our Haas Hall Fayetteville campus. 28% of our scholars identify as non-white in our Bentonville campus. 30% of our children identify as non-white in Fayetteville High, and 26% of students identify as non-white in Bentonville High School. So we are more diverse than Bentonville, and we're increasing the gap in Fayetteville. We have a comprehensive outreach plan to encourage low-income families to participate in our lottery system, to educate them about our programs, and to get them excited about college. So we view it as an opportunity to educate, inspire, and bring those young men and women to our campus and get them in a system that's going to allow them to be successful. We have a partnership with the Cisneros Center, and that's going very well. We have a lot of good things going. We do a lot of community outreach. We're going to different events, the Latino Heritage Festival, the Salsa Festival, and there's a lot of interest from the community about Haas Hall Academy. And so we have people there that can translate, people that can talk to each other and make sure that it's a good fit for everybody. The goal is for them to take something away from our table and hopefully apply at a later time. The Lane Hotel is in the heart of downtown Rogers. It was virtually abandoned over 15 years ago. It's the key element of the collaborative Rogers downtown revitalization process. Lunchroom facilities will allow us to participate in a free and reduced lunch program. So this will be our first attempt to have a functioning kitchen that does participate in the free and reduced lunch program. Downtown Rogers is a safe environment. A lot of people walk. very friendly. It's convenient. There are a lot of nice things to do. We can take various field trips. But I envision this being something where most of our kids ride or walk with their bikes every day. We've talked to the Rogers School System Superintendent. I met with Mary Lay from the Arkansas Arts Academy. I've talked to different local businesses throughout the area, and they're all thrilled about us coming and being a part of their home. And we all do things really well. We all do different things really well. And so I think that with the inclusion of Haas Hall, we offer some things for other schools that they don't do, and certainly they offer some things in their schools that we don't do. So the collaboration effort is going to be quite big. I think you're going to see some really neat stuff coming out of this. We're very pleased with the Rogers superintendent and how he thought, I know he's new, but he also thought that we were just limited to what we wanted to think we could do. So I'm excited about that. I've talked to the Fable superintendent. We have some things going on too. I've talked to Jared Cleveland a number of times. You're going to see some really good partnerships coming out from traditional and charter schools. So we're here today to get a license, and we've never been subjected to disciplinary actions, been classified as academic or fiscal distress, had our enrollment public charter school placed on probation, have it revoked or suspended. I'm going to turn the mic over now to Heather Holloway.
Hey, I'm Heather Holloway, and I am over admissions for Haas Hall Academy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our lottery process and the changes we've instituted within the last couple of years. First, though, let me touch on kind of what we're doing with the advertising. That's more of my background, and that's why I came to Haas Hall in the beginning, was to help with the marketing. Right now, we're working on really increasing our visibility within the community. We're working with radio, we're working with print, we're doing anything and everything we can do as far as advertising to reach the largest amount of people in their space. And so if you read the paper, great, but we realize there's a lot of people that don't do that. We're really working hard to maximize what we're doing within the community as well as what we're putting out there so we can increase awareness about the school and also drive applications. Our application period opened in September, and it will be open until February. Our application form is online, and that's something that we have chosen to do because it allows us an accountability within our own systems. It's something that if you're able to access that at any time, any place, on the web, or at any of our campuses. We realize that there are people without internet access. So this year, we've actually instituted a program at our campuses to help people sign up online. They can come in, they can fill out their application right there at the front desk, and if they're interested in setting up an email, we actually have a dedicated staff person that will help them with that. We also notate on there, if a person doesn't have email, doesn't have access to the internet, we'll call them, we'll keep them up to date on everything that we're doing. At their time of application, they either get an email if they have email, or they get a printed piece of paper within the campuses that tells them their lottery ID number, which is the way that we track our applications while still protecting the privacy of the child, as well as all of the important dates for the lottery process. They know when their kids can come to the school to shadow. They know when the lottery drawing will be. They know pretty much everything there is to know right when they make that first application. So if we don't see them again until the lottery drawing or after, they still have all of that information right there available. And again, it is available online at all times. Another thing that we've done to make sure that parents and children know exactly what's going on at all times with our lottery process is we've instituted this lottery identification tracker. The numbers that are signed are all unique numbers. And if you'll notice on the presentation, Fayetteville, Bentonville, and Springdale, we have a way for them to apply at one time using the guidelines that were outlined in the best practices webinar last spring. On that, you'll notice that those numbers start with F, B, and S, and that helps us from just a tracking perspective. Every lottery ID number is unique, and that's assigned to a kid per campus. And so they could apply for Fayetteville, Bentonville, and Springdale all at the same time, and they have that information available 100% of the time on the website. It is available at haashall.org. Our shadow process is a really neat process. It's actually just started this week, and we are actually scheduling those online this year. If you call the campus and say, hey, I want my kid to shadow, that's totally fine. We'll schedule you online. But again, it provides another layer of accountability for us. We're able to look at those. They're in a database. It's trackable. 5, 6 people can access it and get the information they need from that. Within that shadow process, what the kids do, they come to the school, they attend a full day of classes, they'll eat lunch with the kids, they go to PE. I mean, it's a full day of actually attending class at the school, and it's really neat. It gives the kids a perspective that otherwise they'd have to wait until they are actually enrolled to get. It's not required. It is something that we offer to the kids. This year we are actually doing a kind of a different process with that shadow process. We're doing some info sessions to help make sure that everyone who applies for Haas Hall, who shadows, who is interested in being admitted, gets as much information as possible during that process. So our info sessions are actually going to be held October, November, December, and January. We have morning and evening sessions to accommodate schedules of all parents. We encourage the entire family to attend, and basically what that is, they meet with faculty, administrators, there's a short presentation, and then they get a tour of the campus. Our lottery drawing will be held on February 21st. We already have it scheduled so that we can make sure that everyone gets that information from the get-go when they first apply. Just like last year, we're going to use a random number generator to assign each application a certain number. It's going to be sorted. It's right within the guidelines of what was outlined in that best practices webinar. Our seat acceptance form is something that we first instituted last year. What that does is it lets them know that they've been accepted to Haas Hall after the lottery drawing. If they're accepted, they get this email, and then they can go online and fill out the seat acceptance or come to any of our campuses to accept that seat. And that provides us with a unique tracking number for each acceptance that we have, so we can actually track that and share that better. Here's our lottery timeline. September 1st is when applications opened. October through February, we're shadowing students and holding our open house events. February 1st, we will close applications so that we can get everything ready for the lottery drawing on the 21st of February. Our lottery process is a transparent and traceable process. I myself have worked really hard to make sure it's as traceable as possible, and I'm kind of a nerd for data, so I like it. It's open to the public, it's supervised and audited by the ADE, and we really appreciate you guys' help on this. We're really excited about Rogers. Thank you.
Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Or any public comment? Dr. Schottmeyer, you have 5 additional minutes to close.
My name is Mark Henry, and I've worked with Haas Hall for several years now. What I have brought is copies of first is a letter from the mayor, Greg Hines of Rogers. I'd like to circulate that with your permission. I also have a letter of the president and CEO of the Rogers Lowell Chamber of Commerce in support of this edition, and I'd like to circulate that with your permission. And lastly, I have a Northwest Arkansas newspaper editorial that states, the headline is NWA Editorial, A Well-Earned Expansion. It says, Haas Hall sets the bar for public charter schools. And it talks about how, quote, the Old Lane Hotel facility is being renovated and will no doubt make a fine home for the academy. Never in our wildest imagination did we envision a school going here with that limited parking. And talks as well, it talks about Mayor Hines says Haas Hall is a good fit for what the future holds for the area. So I think we glossed over a little bit about the importance of the Lane Hotel and Rogers revitalization. The Lane Hotel was abandoned, and if you've been to Rogers in a long time, it's 10 years ago they desperately needed a facelift, and they've really made a plan to change and revitalize it. And this is, the Lane Hotel was the albatross. It was for sale and boarded up and filled with a lot of crazy things, meaning pigeons and nuisance components. But this is a great solution, one that's going to allow that neighborhood an opportunity for students to walk, to ride bikes, and to be accessible and open. We've been here several times, and what we stress is the full transparency of our lottery process. We hear that loud and clear. And now, I believe that our process is used, not only is it in conformity with best practices, but some of the things that we're doing is also going to help other schools. Dr. Schottmeyer briefly spoke about talking with the Rogers superintendent and Jared Cleveland of Springdale. You know, you recall that Jared Cleveland in Springdale spoke in opposition to the Springdale expansion, or that we should wait longer. In response, we listened to him, and we postponed the Springdale expansion for a full year to allow full collaboration. And Dr. Schottmeyer met with Dr. Cleveland again yesterday, and he has a lot of promising things. And I want to close in the last few minutes to say, the complaint you have about free and reduced, about what is your data, Rogers gives us that opportunity to start tracking that information, and that's huge. We're going to be able to offer lunches in Rogers, and the kitchen in Rogers could be the platform to serving meals for other local campuses. But in the interim, Dr. Cleveland made some great suggestions and statements on how the Springdale Haas Hall at the new location at the Jones Center can also cooperatively work. So maybe he needs to talk briefly about the optimism that he feels in connection with working collaboratively, which we hear loud and clear from you. You know, last board meeting, there was questions about what kind of collaborative effort. And in fact, they even said, we want to hear a report quarterly from you on how you're collaborating with your area. And he's energized and is doing that. So why don't you kind of give an update in the last minute or so?
Well, I think with Dr. Cleveland, we're certainly looking at sharing busing, we're sharing food services because they already have it all out planned. It would work well for everybody because we want everybody to be fed. Fayetteville, we're in the beginning talks of how we're going to collaborate, and I think we have some wonderful things that we want to do. It's just getting it through everybody's boards and things like that. With Mary Lay on the Arkansas Arts Academy, we can pretty much do it super fast because we're charters, and so we can collaborate a bunch. And we have some really neat things going on there too, some academic and some extracurricular activities that we could share. So I'm really pleased with how far we've come. We've gone to the Hispanic Heritage Festival. We're going to go to the Salsa Festival. Our kids are out pretty much every weekend in the community trying to get interest in applying to Haas Hall. And our kids are the best sellers of the school.
Thank you, Dr. Schottmeyer. All right. Ready to begin questions? Ms. Pfeffer, you have one?
Is this my mic or is this one mine? Okay, that's so I can look. Okay. I just have a few questions. And before I start, Dr. Schottmeyer, I do want to acknowledge that each time you've come, you all have addressed concerns, and I do appreciate that. I know sometimes it probably feels like you're always just in the line of fire from us, and it's not that. We want the best for kids. So when those concerns are addressed, it does help us. Your attorney mentioned the complaint that we have about NSL data, and I wouldn't call it a complaint, I'd call it a concern, because we do want to make sure that all kids are having the opportunity to access the best educational opportunities within an area. You are then going to participate in the National School Lunch Program, or am I misunderstanding what you said?
That's correct.
That is correct, okay. And the deadline, I think, is October 1st in order to do that agreement each year.
Okay.
I think so. Just thinking about next year, wanted to make sure you're aware, and our child nutrition unit will be ready to assist you.
Excellent.
In making that happen.
I'm going to hire somebody to take that role over.
Okay, good. Well, just let me know if I can be of assistance there.
I will. Thank you, ma'am.
The other question I had, you talked about with the location, there was going to be an opportunity for students living in that area. Do you have an idea about an approximate number of students in that immediate area that might be able to take advantage of having this close location?
I think we did a 5-mile radius. It's about 3,200 people that could technically walk.
That
ride
many
their bikes to school.
students?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And then the other question I have, and you may not be able to answer it now, I don't know if you hired very many new teachers this past year or for this school year in your campuses. My question is, with the waiver from licensure, you are adhering to the Arkansas Qualified Teacher rules. I was just curious to know if that expanded flexibility that the AQT rules provide, if there was any particular part of the expanded flexibility that you see as being more valuable, that just to help inform our future decisions around that.
The system has worked well for us because, again, I go for people that have master's degrees or above in their respective fields. So when you teach at Hoss Hall, you don't teach algebra 4 times a day. You teach algebra, you may teach chemistry, you may teach physical science, and then anatomy and physiology at the end of the day. So everything's, it's all knowledge driven. So again, I think that the system that we have currently in place works really well for us.
Do you more, are your teachers more likely to be qualified based on their degrees or work experience, or is it a combination?
It's a combination of both.
Combination of both? Okay, all right. I was just curious to have that information.
I'd love to have you come see it. I mean, you'd walk in and it's weird. Well, people say it's weird. It's different. It's not traditional. And so they walk in, they're like, wow, it reminds them of college.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Saunders?
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
I had a question looking at trying to, I'm sure you're familiar with, I know we will be in Springdale next week on our listening tour concerning input into ESSA and some of the requirements with that and opportunities that we have before us. And with our new vision concerning students that we want them to be able to be prepared for college and career and community engagement. And looking at the career side of that, specifically looking in the area of career completers with career and technical ed, looking at your past numbers that there haven't been students going along those tracks, and wondering what your plans are for the future with that.
Well, we're a college prep institution, so our goal is to have all of our scholars go off to college, right? Earn a degree, and what they want to do after that, that's their choice. But I think that we have various levels of college degrees that fit well into other areas. So we may have a person who decides to become an electrical engineer and they can do something not in that particular field. So I think when you have math and science minded folks, there's big opportunities for them to broaden their horizons. Did that answer your question for you?
I think so.
Ms. Smith?
Okay, I've been struggling here lately, and I think it's been around the mission of the school, okay? And so I know this sounds like it's it's criticism, but hear me all the way out, okay? I've been trying to reflect on why all the controversy about Hoss Hall. You know, what is it? And I've been to your school, and I think that we all accept the fact when we have someone come to us as a charter and they say, our charter school is about recovering kids who have dropped out of school. And we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and those hardest to reach kids. And we all go, that's a good thing to go and do. Go get those kids. And then Hoss Hall, your mission, and you are college prep. I mean, that you are very clear about what you are, and you've never said anything differently. So don't take this as a criticism, okay? I'm just, but by design, and this is in your words in your handbook, by design, Hoss Hall Academy is a school of acceleration, attracting a scholar with higher academic ability and desire. That's your mission, and that's the type of student that you attract. to graduate from Haas Hall, you have to have a GPA of what to graduate? I've heard two different ones.
2.75.
Okay, your handbook says 2.5, but, so that's been changed to 2.75. So if you are a student and you're not on track to have a 2.75 to graduate, what happens to you?
Well, you're put into tutoring and we help you.
Okay, so you follow the academic improvement plan that you have in
Right.
here, which I think is very, I mean, parents have to attend meetings every Tuesday from 2:30 to 3:30.
Right.
The student also has to attend meetings on Wednesdays and Thursdays for assistance, and I think that's good. That's what you want. You want to recognize those students, and then you want to provide intervention for those students. I think the problem that I think people have, and this is where I'm trying to decide is it really a problem, or is this what charters are? We have a mission and we stay to it. You get to stand up and say, we're number one, we've been rated number one, our students have the highest scores, our students are this. And then we say, but you only take the highest students. And that's your mission. That's what you say you're doing. You're not doing anything you're not saying you're doing. That's what I'm trying to point out here. So then when we push back and we ask questions about diversity or socioeconomics, or what do you do with students who have a 2.3 or a 2.2 by the time they're senior year? I mean, is that fair of us? Is it not fair of us? That's where I'm struggling. I'm struggling that we have a charter school that is a public school that is aimed at the highest performing students in the state, in your region, to come to your school. And we look at the statistics and we see how well these kids are performing, and they should be performing. In your handbook, you also talk about having a meeting with students and their parents prior to them being admitted to ensure that it's a good fit. I guess that's my question is, how many students, once they get into Haas Hall, see that it's too rigorous, it's not the path that they want to take? How many of them come to you, see that they can't do it, and leave and go back to traditional public school? I mean, do you lose a lot of kids,
No,
or is it a very small number?
It's a very small amount.
Okay.
And the whole reason that is because they have the opportunity to shadow, they have the opportunity to come in and talk to faculty. I mean, we help everybody. You know, a high tide raises all ships. And so the school has to have everybody perform to their fullest potential. Yours may be much higher than mine, but at least we're trying every day. And so when that happens and you're around those kinds of kids who have that as their goal, that's what creates the type of atmosphere that Haas Hall has that's successful, because people are there to learn, and they want to learn. They want to go off to Model UN and Model Arab League, get these wonderful opportunities, but yet they have goals. And we set their goals for them. We sit down and talk about where you want to go to college, how much is it going to cost, put everything into something that they can understand, and then you work from there. It's not all about the books. I understand that. It's about being a good person, being out in the community, and those types of things. But I feel really pleased with the number of kids who come to Haas Hall. We don't know anything about them when they're admitted. We have kids that were C and D students who turn it around and become A and B students, because it's the environment. It's the level of expectation for everyone.
Okay, thank you for your answer. And Dr., go ahead.
Can I actually jump in really quick?
Yeah, please.
Before I worked at the school, I have a sophomore at the school this year. Her 8th grade year, she was really, really struggling, and I actually made an appointment and came in and sat with Dr. Schottmeyer and said, honestly, like, we toured Fayetteville schools. I really feel like that's a better fit for her. She's just not handling the accelerated curriculum like I'd like her to. And he pulled up her grades and looked at me and said, I think you're making a mistake. Like, I really think she can turn this around. I really think that we can get her a plan. And he sat there and made that plan that day, which was, for me, an enormous favor, but also it was incredible to see that from his perspective as the superintendent going, no, there's 3 things that we can fix right now. And so I firsthand have seen what the school does in these situations. And she's turned it around from being a D student in math to really doing well. And now her sophomore year, she absolutely loves it and is so glad that she wasn't at Fayetteville. So I've seen this happen firsthand, and I really do think that their commitment to meeting with these parents and meeting with these kids and getting them back on track is really what makes it possible for us to have those numbers.
Well, and I know my comments sound like they're being critical, but I guess what I'm doing is I'm just challenging us, even as a charter board, to say, why is it okay for a charter school to focus on dropouts and then not a charter school to focus on the highest group of kids? I mean, I feel like we are struggling with I struggle with this. And if I were a superintendent sitting in a district, I'd be all for the charter school coming in and help me with my kids that are dropping out, but I wouldn't necessarily like the one coming in that is going to take my highest performing kids. And so I do think the fact of being able to work closely with the school district that you're, and having I think that's important. Second thing that struck me that I had a problem with, but I want you to know that I dug into it, was I had a problem with the uniforms and the Land's End and having to have a brand name uniform. I went online, I looked at the prices. It's cheaper than what I pay for my kids' school clothes. I mean, $20, $18 a shirt with the insignia. It wasn't outlandish, but I thought it was going to be. I dug into it and I looked. It wasn't. So I don't know. I guess that's why I'm just struggling right now is the mission of the school. And when we ask you to be an open enrollment school for all kids and kids coming in who are struggling, I probably need to come and visit and say, show me a kid who is struggling and show me an academic improvement plan and what turned it around for this kid. Okay. And Dr. Saunders, I actually wanted to talk to you about this earlier in the week, but couldn't because we're on charter authorizing, to look at numbers of students that in Tryon that did attend and then have left. And was it because of a GPA issue, or was it because, and I would encourage you guys to go back and look at that data also.
Okay. Yeah.
So, those are my comments.
Yeah, could I follow up on her train of thought there? I think it poses a question, and exactly what she was talking about, I think beneficial for us as a committee. When I look at your student demographics and what we're trying to do, are we, we say that, well, we compare, we're as diverse as other districts. I'm looking at a chart that has your demographics compared with Springdale, Bentonville, and Rogers District. And within that, you look at the LEP population, it's 0% for Haas Hall, 47% for Springdale, 4% for Bentonville, 33% for Rogers. Special ed is 0% for Haas Hall, 10%, 10%, and 11% respectively for the other districts. And I bring that up with the idea of asking, is what you're doing, can we replicate it with a similar population, or is it for the niche population that you serve? In other words, can this model that you're producing this success with, could it work in an environment as diverse as those other districts?
I believe it could, yes.
How so?
Again, it's the whole idea of bringing in quality faculty who hold advanced degrees in their respective fields, engaging students in learning. My mom was the GT teacher in Fayetteville schools for 15 years, and I always asked her, if it's such a good thing, why not let everybody do it? And so that's pretty much the mentality of Haas Hall. You walk in this system and it's all GT, even if you've never been exposed to GT before. But there's something that happens when scholars get together and work together and they do projects together, that learning takes a different turn. And now they've become leaders. I think it doesn't matter socioeconomic, skin color, nothing. I think what matters is you just bring in a group of people and you engage them in the learning process, something that they're interested in. And by the time they're in high school, they have some preconceived notions of what they'd like to do. So if it's robotics, or if it's medicine, or if it's art, we can plug them into those certain areas and they can do some wonderful things throughout the day that connects them to the school. I mean, when we go to conferences, we just came back from Washington University, Model UN, and there were kids telling our kids they want to come to our school. They were so respectful, they just did a beautiful job. That's the kind of people that we have leave our institution, and we pride ourselves on that. It's important that you act a certain way. So I think the atmosphere, when you walk in the building, you don't see kids messing around with each other. You see kids walking around the building like adults, and they say hi to everybody. It's a different feel.
Yeah, and I understand that. I respect that. I think there's one variable, though, that is underlining, And it's the idea that all the students that attend there have the parental support and attend there by choice. I think that's part of the shadowing and the meeting, that we discussed. I
Yes,
mean, kids find out what they're getting into and make a conscious choice to abide by that environment and the rules, everything. And in some of the other districts, you're dealing with students that do not have that choice, do not have that support, and would have rather not be at school in general. And so I'm wondering, how would those students be served with that type of environment?
Well, we have students that come from broken homes, and we work with both parents and we work with the student, because our goal is to make sure that the student has options when they graduate from high school. And so for the best way for them to get out of their situation is go to high school, get a college scholarship, and do your own thing. And so it's all about, again, it's all about being in this environment to where we have a litany of services and we take you through this stuff. And whether it's college placement, whether it's financial aid, whether or not it's scholarships, we do all these things multiple times a year with every child and every parent. So there are going to be people that come in and don't understand the whole college process, but I can guarantee you by the time they're in 8th or 9th grade, they understand it. Like right now, we're taking the PSAT. Everybody in the building's taking it. And for some, it's a scary thing because they're younger. But at least they get to gauge where they are against their peers, right? And they start getting letters from colleges and universities, which is a real big thing for them. The next couple of weeks, someone will come them off and say, hey, Dr. S., I got a letter from SLU. They would like to talk to me. That's the kind of stuff that I didn't have, and I went to boarding school. We're doing it here, and the kids it's a wonderful thing, because they'll all bring their letters in and show them to us, and then the scholarships start coming in, and it's the environment. I really believe that.
Dr. Schottmeyer, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate Mr. Henry. I appreciate your comments, and I certainly appreciate the efforts of making the transparency or the lottery process more transparent. Thinking back, and it's been a while, but I think back to our last charter panel, and many of the things that this panel brought forth, you've listened, and I appreciate that. Certainly, seeing that 12% of applicants are being served, so there's a great demand for your campus, and we can't deny that. Seeing a 55 to 68% difference in the other high schools regarding your your readiness benchmarks on the ACT Aspire, those are impressive numbers, and so I believe that it's truly working, and I do appreciate you continuing to listen. The two things I want to bring out is partnerships must be ongoing. So as you and your leadership team, I would love to see, if I was in your shoes, I would want to make sure that an ongoing partnership, whether that's done on a monthly basis, every 2 months, partnerships are based upon relationships. And so I would just encourage that continue, because there will be challenges. There will be struggles, because to Ms. Smith's point, as a former superintendent, it would be tough to see my highest performing students choosing another campus. But it also would make me better as a superintendent. So all of the things that we've been challenged by, or I personally have been challenged by, I just want to encourage you that I appreciate you listening. So I'm not asking for a response. I'm just encouraging that ongoing partnership is going to be to the success of all students, and I just want to commend you for that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
I just needed to get some clarification on a couple of things.
Yes, sir.
When you were talking about, I talk loud anyway.
No, it's working. It's just, they're not looking.
I can, now I lost my train of thought. Okay, when you were talking about the lottery part of it, did I understand you right that you try to get all of them to apply to all your campuses? Or is it just the specific campus? I wouldn't,
We allow them to apply for all at one time, just so that they don't have to resubmit 3 different applications, or 4 in the case of Rogers. It's really up to what the parents can do. And I feel like I have this conversation probably 2 or 3 times a week with parents. They call and they say, well, we really can't drive to Bentonville, but like, if we get into Bentonville, could we maybe like send our kid to Fayetteville? And that's one of those things that we've really had to clarify a lot. If they get into Bentonville, great. If they get into Fayetteville, great. But there is no cross between those things. It's just a way to make it a little easier on the front end for the parents applying.
so there's, but, and kind of what I was thinking about is on the waiting list. How do you keep up with the difference in, if they apply to all 3, are they on the waiting list all 3 times?
3
Does-
separate waiting lists, and they could be drawn 24 on the Springdale waiting list and 100 on the Bentonville waiting list, and they could get into the Fayetteville waiting list. So it'll just be 3 different lists. Right now, we maintain 1 waiting list for Fayetteville, 1 for Bentonville, and that's, of course, by grade.
Okay, I guess I'm kind of, okay. I don't know how that would work. It seems like there would be, I guess I would just need to see to get some,
So, okay, let me just clarify that. So if you were to say you had, let me think of an example, 1,500 on your waiting list, that may be 500 students? Because it'd be counted 3 times on 3 waiting lists?
It'll be 3
Each-
separate waiting lists, so each waiting list would consist of 500.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it could be
So it
just
is
5
3
unique,
separate.
I'm sorry, 500 unique students, but there's 1,500 on the waiting list. because of
1,500
the-
total, yeah, if you combine them all. We've just been instructed, actually, we met with Ms. Boyd and some of her associates back last March and asked, if you guys were approaching this, what would you do in this situation? And they kind of walked us through how they would like to see it set up, just from their perspective of their understanding. And it's worked really well for us this year. So we're going to continue that for next year, I believe.
also, I had questions about on the budget, of course.
I can't answer those.
On the 17-18 budget, it's on student growth, it used a number of 6,800, and the foundation funding amount right now is 6646, and the adequacy committee is still doing their work to set what the foundation will be for next year, and they don't have to have that recommendation until November the 1st, so I was wondering why the 6,800 was used, which would be about $154 over what it is right now. So if I took that 154 times the 380 that you're projecting, it's $58,000, and your first year was only showing that you were going to have 35, so I basically just took that away.
Right, I apologize for that. That would just be something we would take out, some general supplies and some classroom equipment, because the lane will have everything in it when we get there. So it's like, open the
Okay,
door,
so-
everything's there.
So if the General Assembly doesn't raise adequacy up to 6,800, which is over what they've done, is more than, I don't believe there's going to be $6,800. You're saying you would just cut your expenditures to meet
Right.
whatever the revenues
Right,
are? Okay.
And by example, what he's referring to is the classroom equipment is $110,620, and relative to the Lane Hotel, as this is an ongoing process, I mean, this is a proposed advanced budget, he's telling you that, or he's stating that the Lane Hotel is a turnkey project, meaning that 110,000 is grossly overstated in this forecast, given the change in circumstances at this particular Lane Hotel. Am I being clear, or am I being unclear? I'm sorry. There's a whole lot of room in that 110,000 in the classroom equipment that would far offset the $150 discrepancy you point out, is what he's saying.
Okay. For both, and then on the second year also?
I'm going to ask that you please speak into the microphone. It doesn't pick up if you're far away from it. Thank you.
And then on the, because on the second year also, I'm assuming that there's overages built into the expenditures there too, because you still have the 6,800 times 350, and then I'm trying to figure out where the 857 student growth is coming from, because I don't, how much is the cap for the Fayetteville? Because if the Fayetteville's is going to be, this one's going to be the same as the Fayetteville, wouldn't the same cap apply?
Yes.
And so where's the 857 student growth in the second year for this school going to be? Because if it's, the funding follows the student, if you're trying to build a budget based off 857, it seems like you're trying to include ADM from another campus onto this, so does that affect that other budget?
Well, that's the, I broke it down into Hostile Academy LEA for the entire organization. So you've got multitude of campuses in this, just showing what it's going to look like on my end at the end of the year. So I can say, I've got 3 budgets, right? I've got a Fayetteville budget, I have a Bentonville budget, I have a Springdale budget, I'll have a Rogers budget, and we'll also have a budget that's all of it put together.
Okay, well, then I have but how are you going to keep the funding separate for all 4 of those? Because, well, I know that with because I think the Bentonville one is a separate charter.
It is.
So it needed to be completely separate from all
Right.
that, so.
Correct.
Now with the 857 mixed into this Rogers budget, how is that going to affect the other 2 campuses? Because now I don't, because this one, again, in the second year shows that you're planning on ending with only 106,000, but that 857,000 ADM for student growth, which is overstated, but you said you had expenditures built in. So I'm just kind of wondering how it's not making sense to me having all combined, all 3 campuses for that 857 on the student growth.
The way I looked at it is, I had 3 different budgets, right? I combined the 3 budgets into one.
Is that what this is?
Yes.
Just for the student growth number or for this whole, but that seems like it wouldn't be very understated for if it's all 3 budgets.
Is that reflective of your?
That is your, because I will not receive money for the child until school starts. Comes back end.
Right, and so that, the 857 you're saying contemplates the expansion on Springdale
Springdale and the expansion in Fayetteville
and also Rogers?
and
If
Rogers.
approved, because would you explain to them some of the phase-in components that you're talking about with the Rogers? How you're not going to...
Gentlemen,
They can't
I'm
hear you
so
on
sorry.
that.
No, no,
I'm sorry.
my fault.
Well, in Rogers, we're going to go.
Feel free to remove the microphone and hand it back and forth, but our viewing audience cannot hear you whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. So what I was asking him to explain possibly is the expansion growth in the Rogers. He's not going to start with 12th grade in Rogers, and I'm asking him to kind of explain to you why these numbers are not rounded at 1,500 or 1,400 or that kind of thing. So I believe we're getting help.
Maybe I just go ahead and explain.
Did I swear, I'll need to swear you in.
Introduce yourself and if you swear in.
Do you swear or affirm that, if you'll raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. If you'll state your name and title, please.
Scott McRae, Finance Specialist, APSRC. I want to try to answer Mr. Rogers' question here. On the student growth funding, with the Fayetteville campus having the charter, having the license, it's all going to be under one district LEA, all the finances. So when you look at the 857, you're taking in consideration the new Springdale campus, which I think has a cap of 500.
Right, and I get that,
Okay.
but if I'm supposed to be looking at this budget for just what's going to happen at Rogers, then having 857 student growth, if it's being included in what the budget for Rogers in, then aren't you cutting Springdale and Fayetteville? You're shorting what the revenues would be for them too? Because because if I take this total, looking at just this budget right here, just this budget, and it shows their total revenues are projecting is $8.4 million, and their total expenditures are going to be 8.2, that only leaves 106,000 in the good for just Rogers. So then what's happening to Fayetteville and Springdale if you're using all the student growth amount to run the Rogers facility? That's where I understand, but and then also I have a problem with including the whole student growth for actually how much the growth is growing in those other two campuses and putting it in this budget here for when that money should be going for those kids at those campuses.
Okay, now they've included two budgets, one for the Rogers campus only, and then one for the entire license.
So that second one is for the entire license with everybody.
Yes, and then the other
Okay.
one is just for Rogers.
Okay. So,
So for Rogers, the only funding they will receive is student growth funding at 380. So if you go over to the other budget, which includes the entire license, then that's going to include all three campuses.
okay. And then on student growth, that first year revenue, the 380, if it is that, student growth doesn't come till January. By law, we pay it out 6% in January, so that would
Correct.
mean that Haas Hall and Rogers would be operating on what for the first 6 months of the year?
Well, they have carryover from the previous year. They have over $1 million, or 100, I think
This school
150,000.
doesn't, but this campus doesn't exist right now.
But it's all going to fall under one finance umbrella, per se.
So you're going to take money away from the other two existing campuses to start this campus?
Well, with a license, it's all one
But
district. So it's all combined. It's like having a district with separate schools.
But
All
the
the
ki-
funding comes in as one,
But
but
the
it's,
kids aren't all combined. That is, and, because I'm just trying to understand, I know I'm just struggling here, but if you have a school over here and a school over here, and you take money from that school to start this school, what happens to the kids at these two schools?
well, they're going to have increased funding because of the additional students.
But not till January.
But they have carryover revenue to cover that.
So they're overfunded right now for what they need for those kids at those other two campuses?
I wouldn't say they're overfunded. They were just able to carry over from the previous year through, savings.
But, okay, and I understand, but do you see, my concern is that that money was supposed to be for those two campuses, and now you're telling me that they're just going to take money from those two campuses to start this third campus. And I'm saying, if they have carryover, that's fine, but what happens with the kids in those other schools why wasn't that funding used at the other campuses?
Well, I think they've been planning this, so they've been able to, accumulate additional funds and set them aside for this purpose. So, in the end, it's all going to, all the funds are going to be in one pot.
And-
Okay,
and
so it's
I-
all
and
going
I
to
under-
work out in the
and-
end. But
and I
how the funding
understand-
structure works,
I understand how the structure works.
so it is a
I
little
don't have to
difficult.
like it because the kids, because I want the money for that kid that's at that school. So I get what you're saying. And I see what you're saying. Oh, I'm not through yet.
Mr. West,
Oh, I'm sorry. One quick response. Our accuracy and detail relative to students for each population in the admissions process should not mislead you into thinking that at the end of the day, the accounting still stops with this license. We were very careful to say, okay, you have to apply to the Springdale campus to minimize and squarely address the concern that a lot of kids from Fayetteville who couldn't get into Fayetteville would simply apply and get in through the Springdale Avenue. We're trying to create the geographic specific applicant pool that is tied to the concerns you have of, a lot of kids just using this as another satellite office or a satellite school. So for that reason, we listened to the state, the authorizing representatives, and they said, keep it distinct and separate. So that's the application is on one side, and then you have all the accounting is on the other. And all the accounting is at the end of the day, at the bottom of the line, do we have a positive or a negative number? And these reports, there's one report or budget shows the Rogers only to show you how that would work. But at the end of the day, the second one talks about the overall license. Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's important everybody know that no child would be shortchanged on either campus. We do have the blessing of a foundation who provides us with ancillary funds as well. So I don't know what those numbers are going to be, but I can assure you that they're quite high, and it does allow us to do other things.
And I wasn't trying to insinuate, I was just trying to figure it all out. I just, because taking the money from the other schools, I wasn't trying to insinuate that you would cut the funding to open another one.
Right.
And I was just trying to get clarification.
Oh, I
for
appreciate
myself.
what your train of thought, sir.
Can I ask a question right there,
Yeah.
Greg? I don't want to interrupt you, but on that train of thought, as I was looking at the numbers, and I wanted to clarify what was said, the numbers that I had closing out on 15-16 had the legal balance of Haas Hall, Bentonville around 53,000. Does that sound correct?
Sounds right.
Okay, and what on the academy? Do you recall that? I'm trying to find it still. 144,000? So it's not the $1 million number that we heard?
These are just your per pupil expenditures that we receive from the state.
No, I'm talking about the carryover balance, because we were talking about operating on existing funds that are already in the bank.
Right.
And so there's roughly, looks like the combination of those two, around $200,000
I hear you.
for the first 6 months is what would be needed to maintain that new campus, correct?
Right. And we do have grant money.
Mr. Rogers, can we move on? You have another
Yeah, I was
question?
looking for something on what he, but I do have just a couple more clarifications. One on the hotel, so is the hotel ready? I understand that someone's renovating it right now. Were they renovating it to start a school there? Is there already desks in it? Is it set up? I mean, when would you be able to start classes in
We
it?
could start classes in August of 17. They had to completely gut all the floors, put new floors in because they didn't have the right weight-bearing floors. The last time I was in there, they had about 2/3 of the floors done, and they have 238 windows that they're installing, and then there's some windows that have to remain in the period, and it takes two gentlemen an entire day to take the window out and put it back in. So it's a slow-moving process.
But they are on schedule for y'all to be able to.
They're on schedule. We had a big meeting just Monday.
And then the last question, I promise, is just on the waivers. I know that you're just replicating the waivers that you had at Fayetteville, but when I was looking through them, I had a question on 618-503. It's the written student discipline policies are required. You have a waiver for that one, but then you also go more specific to 618-503 A1CI, which is pertaining to alternative learning environments. And so I get that one, why you have that one, but I wasn't sure why, and I don't know if I was here or not when he did the waiver for the whole 503, but I was just wondering why you need the waiver for the whole 618-503.
Is that the?
It's the written student discipline policies required,
Yeah, we have them. They're up on the website.
so you don't really need that waiver?
Probably not.
So we could just, but I get the one on the 503A for the alternative. I understand why you need that one,
Sure.
but I was just wondering.
We post
for the-
them. They sign paperwork.
May I assist? Morning panel, Trip Walter, staff attorney, APSRC. Pardon me. Mr. Rogers, here is my understanding of why that looks the way it does, and that is, it's not, excuse me, as Dr. Schottmeyer said, it's not an attempt to avoid having a student discipline policy, but just not one that necessarily, excuse me, meets all the requirements in the statute. In other words, it has full due process as required up and through hearings through the board level and appropriate at every step of the way. It just may not exactly look like the 501 et sec requirements. Just as a personnel policy they're going to have, but it might not look exactly like the statutory requirements. And the 5013 piece is, pardon me, is part, I believe, of the standard set of waivers that an open enrollment requests when it proposes not to have an ALE. So to answer your question, I would say for flexibility purposes, we would ask that that remain the same, but that's the intent of it. And also, I think probably when it was originally requested, they were done in broader language than perhaps they are today.
And that's what I was thinking, that they
Yes,
came in and
but
did the
I-
whole 503 just to get the alternative learning part out.
Right, to
But now
emphasize that, yes, sir.
But now that we have the alternative learning has been out, I was just wondering why we still need the blanket one on there. I was just kind of tossing when I was looking through them, because I saw all the rest of them, and I get it, just I didn't know why we needed a blanket one when we went one step down and were more directly specific on what we were trying to take out.
I would think it's just because of the subject matter issue, just to make sure, again, that that was a standard part, that's why that was lifted out, and then just the discipline policy piece in general was the 501 at SEC piece. Yeah, I know they're covering the same area, but again, it's, I guess, by the way the package of ALE waivers has been done.
Okay. I guess I'm still, because if we just kept the ALE one but had the 503, what would change? If we took that way, if they didn't have that waiver anymore, but they kept the ALE waiver requirements, what would change?
I don't think really anything would change per se. They would still have the waiver, so long as it was clear they had the flexibility on the discipline policy. That would be my concern with any proposed changes to what they have now.
Okay. Jennifer? Clarification?
I think the statute gives them the ability to develop their own policies anyways. I mean, that's with any school district. So, excuse me. So I think just the specific waiver that handles the ALE, which is what most charters have, covers the issues that they have, but they're still free, much like any other school district, to develop their own policies.
Do you know how many other charters have this blanket one?
2, including Haas. But everyone else, all the others have the specific subsection.
Okay. So if they didn't have the blanket one, nothing would really change?
I don't believe so.
Wow, I got Mark coming out now.
Can I, I think I may have some, two things I think going on here. One is, as Mr. White reminded me, the applicable rules that go with this, that they have a waiver for, talks about the school board requiring all of that. The discipline policies and the ALE and everything. So that, we would like to maintain that from consistency. And also, if you were to look at 503, 503, in my opinion, is more expansive than just the ALE. The specific piece is talking about you have to have guidelines in your policies that reference an ALE, but I think also there's more information in there. If you look at 502 and 503 together, they help spell out exactly what a school district is required to have in its policy. And again, it's the only reason I think for the asking for 501 at SEC is the flexibility for Haas Hall to develop its own comprehensive policy which comports with all due process requirements, just perhaps in a way more tailored to its situation, as is common with, I think, virtually all of the open enrollment charters. So that's why I would advocate for leaving it the way it is if it's the panel's pleasure.
You want
Okay.
to think on that one for a minute?
Yeah, because I don't read it the same way. I mean, because I get why they want to take the ALE part out, but I don't know why having it that they are required to have written policies, and it doesn't. It's for school districts to have them, and they already said they do it anyway. So and I'm not really, not much less for Haas Hall, I just don't like the precedent setting of having waivers out there to have for someone that may not do it right to come along, and that's the only thing I was thinking. Nothing against Haas Hall or how they're doing it. I'm just kind of forward thinking a little bit on it. This is the only reason I was looking at it.
Ms. Davis?
I just wanted to point out that Haas Hall Fayetteville does have the blanket waiver, but Haas Hall Bentonville only has the specific waiver. So they'll have to let you know whether or not it's working in the Bentonville
Does
campus.
the blanket cover Springdale as well?
Springdale, if it's a license of Fayetteville? Yes. Okay, then they probably have the blanket waiver as well.
As Rogers will be as well.
Right, but like I said, the Bentonville campus has the specific waiver, so they'll have to let you know if it works for them.
Mr. Lester? Ms. Leewood? Questions? Ms. Smith?
Okay, so one quick question. In your handbook, I noticed that there's a cost for AP exams. You do recognize that the state, we have a law that we pay for AP exams, you just have to turn in your invoice?
Right.
Okay, and so we're charging students for AP exams? It says $89 or a fee reduction of $63. So do y'all still charge for them?
Do we still charge for them? No.
So we don't charge for AP exams? Okay, but I don't think y'all have turned in an invoice to have reimbursements. Just
Probably
know
not.
that that's available to you,
Okay.
okay? And for the charter office, Ms. Boyd, just following up on kind of what I was stating earlier, I would like some information pertaining to anyone who has left Haas Hall and gone back to public school and what their GPA was. And when you get that information to be sure and share with Haas Hall, it won't impact how I vote today, but if the information in there is different than what was said today, because what was said today was if they're struggling and they're not on track to graduate, we help them. And they look like they have a comprehensive plan in their handbook. So I just want to verify that the data reflects that.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions?
I do.
Dr.
Over
Saunders?
waivers. You want me to get into some of it?
So now's as good a time as any.
All right. Okay, just want to get into the, on some of the waivers, going for some clarification. I noticed that the rules, I'm looking on the rules section, the rules governing school district requirements for personnel policy, salary schedules, minimum salaries, and documents posted to district websites is waived, is a requested waiver. And, okay, I guess my first question would be, why is that? Or are there just specific parts of that?
I'm sorry, would you give me the question again?
It's over the website requirements waiver on the rules. Well, why is that requested?
Dr. Saunders, did I read in the notes that they're replicating all the waivers that were in the original charter? Is that correct, Mr. Walters? There are no additional or fewer waivers?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Gocher.
So if they're just replicating an amendment, okay, just making sure before we can dig into it.
Madam Chair, may I address Dr. Saunders' concern? I believe, Dr. Saunders, that this, again, it's kind of like the student discipline thing. It goes back to the way when these waivers were originally requested, that they were handled, that is, generally as a group, instead of picking out pieces. I am not sure, but I'm almost positive that I think what Haas Hall is doing is in compliance with what you're thinking of. In other words, under their state-required information link on the website, they're going to have salary information, policy information, those kind of things. I think, for example, now the waiver, if it was asked, would be like perhaps sections 1 through 7. I believe, of that rule, set of rules, and I believe it's Section 9 where we have what the 611-129 piece, the things that the statute requires to be placed on the website. So if that is concerned, they're going to be in compliance with that and list all the things that are required by statute on the website, and they are not using this waiver to avoid that.
No, and I didn't want to come that way. Let me explain a little bit of my thinking, and it's a little bit of our internal process, and I want to be able to protect Haas Hall in that at the same time, in the sense of it asks for a waiver for all of the rules. And so my first question is, what part of the mandatory reporting requirements are not needed, are not being met? Okay, so with that frame of mind, then I go back and look at the laws that are being requested, and those laws that have specific requirements are not being requested to be waived. So therefore, it would be my interpretation that they're still held to that standard under the laws, because under those laws, 611-129, 617-201, and there's really a handful of other ones that have website posting requirements, and those laws are not being requested to be waived. So looking for clarification on that.
Well, let me rephrase and make sure, I want to make sure I'm absolutely addressing your concern. So you're saying that if they have waivers from such thing as the salary schedule requirements and personnel policies and what have you, you want to make sure that through the waiver of the posting requirements, that they are not using them to say we're not posting any personnel policy information, we're not posting any expenditure information, et cetera.
Partially, I think just to clarify what's not being posted, so we see if that waiver is needed. I mean, they may be meeting almost all of it. That's my first question, is what's not being posted that's required. But my other part of that, and I'll defer to our counsel to be able to answer, if you have a waiver from the rules, but you don't have a waiver from the laws, you're still applicable to the laws. And those laws are not being requested to be waived.
Well, I think the short answer, two-part answer, the short answer would be, I believe they were waived or effectively waived under the way the requests were handled at the time and what was suggested to be asked for. Secondly, on the policy, on the pieces, as far as the state reporting goes, I don't believe that there would be anything missing, so to speak, from the state required info piece. In other words, again, as you're with policy, with the policy requirements and things of that nature, again, it's just meant to have them have the flexibility to do policies, compensation schedules, et cetera, that are specific to Haas Hall, not that they don't post the relevant required information on the website.
So I guess I might defer to our counsel. So my question would be, if we are to enforce, say, from a standards perspective, are they required to have the postings in 611-129, and they do not have a waiver from 611-29, are they required to post those?
Yes.
Okay.
And you know, I'll go back and look at it, but I know that there are a lot of districts that have specific waivers of posting to the, I'm not sure if maybe it's something that either hasn't been looked at and how it kind of connects to 611-129, and I'll look at it to see if, you know, they have the waiver of one, even though it requires it in 129, does that still cover it? I will check on that and let you know.
Just as an additional note, we do have a state-required information page on our website. It is up to date as of a week and a half ago. We went through and updated those links, and it is accessible from every single page of our website, not just the home page. It's right on the very top bar if you go to hosshall.org.
Okay. And I think more my line of thinking is trying to get consistency within the application of what is being waived, because it's unclear. If the laws are not being waived, that's what I was asking our counsel, is I think they're still applicable.
Yes, sir.
Or my interpretation, and that's why I defer to legal to.
Okay, so Under 611-129, you know, it does require the personnel policies. It says as required by 617-201 and 617-2301. So if you would have a waiver of that as required, then I would view this as probably not having to have this required because you have a waiver from that entire section. But they do not have a waiver of 617-201 anyways, and they're not requesting one in this amendment. So, but I would think in other charters, there are some charters that do have waivers of specific subsections of 617-201. Neither of Haas's campus have that, though. So I would think that if they have a waiver of the entire section, then this specific 611-129 subsection would not apply.
Okay.
Clear as mud?
I think so.
So to summarize what I think I just heard, in the future, there needs to be some cleanup, either to protect Haas Hall, that either you know what you're actually being waived from and you, or not.
Yeah.
And so right now, it's somewhat confusing in that you have a waiver from the rule, but you do not have a waiver from the law. Ms. Pfeffer, any additional questions?
Mine isn't a question for Haas Hall, but I just wanted to, I think it's addressing one of Ms. Smith's concerns on students who drop out of the charter. And I know part of it was the grade point, but, and this is probably for Ms. Boyd and maybe something, you know, we would want to look at, but in the law, it talks about within 10 calendar days from the close of the fourth quarter, charter schools shall submit a written report, and one of the categories they would be reporting on are students who drop out of a charter. So that may be something that at some time we need, just as those reports come in, for that to be aggregated for us, you know, in terms of if there were some concerns noted in any charter school that, and so, or am I looking at that incorrectly?
Ms. Pfeffer, that report, we collected from every school and we posted online. Everything that's in that report right now is generated directly from the way the statute reads that requires that report. And I think you're right, it could be a great starting place.
Any additional questions from the panel? Mr. Rogers?
Okay, so we're going to start a Springdale campus, a Rogers campus. We're going to run the Fayetteville all by August of next year.
Right.
No concerns, no problems. You think you're going to have teachers, kid, everything's rocking and rolling.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
I mean, thousands of scholars apply. I have
Microphone, please.
350-plus faculty members. Thousands of scholars apply. We have 300-plus faculty members who have applied and continue to apply every day from all over the nation. So it's going to be great. And the nice thing about the Lane Hotel, unlike other schools that have opened up, it was when you walk in the front door, everything is there for you. So don't have to worry about purchasing furniture. Don't have to worry about purchasing computers. It's all right there.
Ms. Boyd, I have a question for you, please. On July 14th, 2016, the state board required Haas Hall to provide a written quarterly report of collaboration with districts and a diversity outreach plan. Has that been submitted to you for the November state board meeting?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So, Dr. Schottmeyer,
Yes.
we like to get our reports in timely. So
Just tell me when you want it.
we would love to have it this week, but by early next week at least.
We can get it for you, no
Okay.
problem.
If you'll send that directly to Ms. Boyd, we'd appreciate
Yes,
that.
ma'am, certainly.
I wanted to commend you on your PowerPoint. So I'm thinking Ms. Holloway smiling back there. It was really very well organized, very visually appealing, very informative. And it did mention that outreach plan. And so I would ask that a copy of that be sent to Ms. Boyd's office, because I know that the state board has asked for that. And we just want to make sure that
Just want
we've,
to know when to turn it in.
I'm sorry,
We just wanted to know when to turn it in.
if you'll send it to Ms. Boyd.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I had one final question, was you are approved for 500 students at both the Bentonville and Fayetteville campus, is that correct?
That is correct.
And are both of those campuses filled to capacity?
We're doing controlled growth because what we found is that when you open up a new school, Bentonville, not as many older kids want to attend, so I would say in the next 2 years, there'll be a capacity. Fayetteville is at capacity.
Okay. Because I knew you had a rather large waiting list, I just wanted
We have a
to,
large waiting list, yes, ma'am.
if there were empty seats there for a reason.
Well, it's all about being able to hire quality faculty that want to teach courses where you have a need.
It's also by class.
It's by class, right? I mean, everything's done by academic ability, so if scholars want to have engineering,
Okay, the waiting list.
oh yeah.
If you tell her the waiting
So I think what I'm hearing you say is then, once you have a high-quality teacher, then you're filling up that class. There are no empty seats in those classes.
That is correct.
And then, but you're not starting new classes until you have high-quality staff for those classes.
I want to control growth. I hope to add an additional 60 scholars in Bentonville next year and just grow it and have it function with 500 kids the same as it did with 300, if that makes sense.
It does, it does. Thank you. Any additional?
Yeah,
Dr. Gotcher?
Madam Chair, just to your point, did we, in our past meeting, did we set an end date on those quarterly reports, or was that?
No, it just, I've got the minutes pulled up.
Sure, I figured you did. Go
It
ahead.
just said that, that they would be required to provide written quarterly reports for collaboration with districts and diversity outreach. There was no end date. That's something the state board would have to set.
State Board, we have to set the end date on that, okay. I didn't know if that was something that we'd consider at another time.
No, state board, that's a state board motion. If there's no additional questions, then I'll entertain a motion. Oh, well, let me ask Ms. Davis. Ms. Davis, are there any remaining issues regarding Hoss Hall?
I don't have any.
Okay. Now I'll accept a motion.
Okay, so I just need clarification on what we're asking for. On the letter for amendment request, so we're asking for, to replicate the Fayetteville campus, and then to the sibling admission preference for Rogers, and to replicate the current waivers. Are those the three? So the motion would need to be made on all three of those?
Or you can just make a motion to approve the request.
You could make a motion to approve the request as a whole, or if you think that there may be concerns or you have questions about one of the parts of it, you can do them individually.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the request as a whole.
Second.
Any conversation? We have a motion by Ms. Smith and a
I would
second by Dr. Gocher.
I'm still messed up about the 503, just the waiver. I know that's a small, but I would still like to start having us look closer at the waivers and where they are just specific parts of it, only have those parts of it rather than blanket waivers of law, just to protect the charter schools and us for future down the road. So I would just like to have that included in, that we don't approve. Yeah, I don't want, because I don't want to, I would like to not do the waiver for the 503, because I haven't heard anyone say that's really needed to have the blanket waiver when they do have the, and I'm not asking to change the one about the ALE part.
May I make a suggestion? Perhaps you want to approve the request with the requirement that we conduct an audit with the school on their waivers, and give a date for that to be done.
And we'd be happy with that as well. Instead of interjecting my promise to work with them, we'd be happy to work with the legal team or to walk through each line and respond squarely to your request. I think we have a track record of listening and trying to implement recommendations, and we'd be happy to do that as well.
And I appreciate that. I don't know what that does, though. Because if we approve it like that, and then we do the audit, and we see, oh, well, they really didn't need it after all, we've already approved it, so does that mean we'd have to call them back up here, go through it again, have a hearing, and then request the waivers be revoked? And I guess that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Sure. And I understand that concern, but I think it's something that, like Dr. Chandra's point had brought up, and that we've talked about it on several occasions. Some of the earlier charters that were first granted, their waivers were different, or how they looked. And so we need an audit, not just of Haas Hall, of course, but, kind of an audit of all the charters to ensure that, they're not participating in doing something that they might not have a rule that was later brought up, that they're not, that kind of brings us all into compliance, because I think that, the charter process has grown and become more mature, and just to kind of bring it to make sure everyone's compliant both on our side and their side. And at that point, we would have to do amendments for those charters to add what they would need to add, or give up what they didn't need. So I don't know if that necessarily affects your decision today or how you feel today, but it's something that we have been discussing.
Dr. Gocher?
And I think, Ms. Davis, what might be wise to have an ongoing process of this audit after legislative session ends in 2017,